Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to this virtual professional development opportunity. My name is Joe Schmidt, and I'm the Social Studies Specialist for the Maine Department of Education. Today, I am happy to welcome ThinkerAnalytix from Harvard University, where we will be joined by Nate Odie, Ann Sanderson, and Aiden Kestigen. Nailed it. I was working on this off G in practice. And so we are here today to talk about argument mapping with ThinkerAnalytix. I want to give you a little bit of the backstory as part of the full disclosure. I learned about this in 2018 at the Northeast Regional Social Studies Conference in Boston, where I saw Nate presenting. I was really blown away by the idea of this being used in the social studies classroom. I went and bugged Nate after the session, continued to bug him enough, asked a lot of questions, proposed a lot of ideas to eventually where we got to the point where I was invited to join the advisory board for ThinkerAnalytix. So full disclosure, I want you to know part of the reason they are here is because I serve on the advisory board. And the other part of the reason that they are here is because this is fantastic. I've used this in multiple sessions throughout the years, including 2019 forum assessment in the social studies classroom, where I talked about argument mapping as a way to help assess where students are in terms of speaking and listening, discussion and debates in the classroom. So with that all being said, I will turn it over to Nate, Aiden, and Ann, and they will take you on our journey. They are going to start off. I do need to say I gave them the question prompt that they're going to start with. Nate and I were talking the other day. So this is the first time out. So if you don't like it, you can blame me. If you like it, Nate can have all the credit. So take it away.
Thanks, Joe. Yeah, my name is Nate Odie. I'm a fellow in Harvard's philosophy department, and I'm the lead instructor for ThinkerAnalytix. Really stoked to be able to share with you guys just a few things today. So we teach a method called argument mapping, and we use it to help teachers and students discuss controversial issues with precision and care. And there's a few things we've done to support that, including built a logic boot camp, which is an online course that we'll show you in a few minutes. We've also built a puzzle game. But one of the things we do is we teach students and teachers to use a simple software tool to map arguments. So I thought we'd talk about a controversial issue today. So thank you to those of you who volunteered to be willing to participate. And we're going to talk about one of the more politically contentious topics currently dividing our democracy, and that is whether or not cereal with milk is a soup. And so Joe warned me that this could get feisty. I'm not sure if you guys have strong opinions. I know there's a few middle school teachers here, so, or if you guys have kids. I haven't had cereal with, or haven't had soup with milk myself anytime recently, to be honest, but I've had it in my life. So here we go. So what you can see here, I'm using a software tool called MindMup. And we've got a tutorial document that'll teach you how to use this. It's free. It integrates with Google Drive. And it's pretty intuitive, and students find it intuitive to use as well. So hopefully you'll be able to track along with me as I map our discussion here. So I'm wondering, what you'll see here I have as a main claim. It says cereal with milk is a soup. And I'm wondering if anyone is willing to offer a premise, which is a reason to believe that cereal with milk is a soup. So is anybody willing to support the main claim here in favor that cereal is a soup?
Can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Okay, great. I'm Deb White from Orono, Maine, and I will say that since soup is a liquid and solid combination, cereal with milk is a soup.
Great. So what I heard you saying there, Deb, is that soup is a liquid and solid combination, like that?
Yep.
Great. So thank you so much, Deb. So what Deb has done is kindly given us a premise, which is just a reason to believe the main claim here. So the main claim is that cereal with milk is a soup. A reason to believe that. Why should I believe this? Well, soup is a liquid and solid combination. Deb, I'm wondering, I noticed that you might have a hidden assumption there about cereal that you didn't state yet, but you're assuming in order to make your argument work. Do you know what I'm driving at?
I think I may have started to say that since soup is a liquid and solid combination, and cereal with milk is also a liquid and solid combination, cereal with milk is soup. Is that what you were looking for?
Awesome. Yes, crushed it. So that's exactly what I was looking for. So what I want everyone to see is that Deb has given us a hidden co-premise here. And so a hidden co-premise is just an assumption that you have, which explains how your premise helps to support your claim. So the original claim is that soup is a liquid and solid combination. And then the hidden assumption, which in this case was a fairly obvious and uncontroversial assumption, is that cereal with milk is a liquid and solid combination. And what you guys can see that I did here is I made it dotted lines with this button up here in MindMap. And that's kind of nifty because what it allows me to do is to indicate that this was an unstated assumption. You may have noticed that often people are talking past each other when they disagree about something controversial. And often it's because one or both people have unstated assumptions that they're not stating out loud about which they disagree. And so argument maps allow us to expose those hidden assumptions. And then what I just want everyone to see is that these two statements work together to give one single reason. So I bracketed them together underneath the claim. So there's one single support connection here, even though there's two separate statements. They're working together or holding hands. We call them co-premises. So Deb's given us a pair of co-premises which work together to support the main claim. So thank you so much, Deb. First of all, is everybody already convinced? Does everyone believe that cereal is a soup now?
Nate, I have one concern in this, is that I believe tomato soup is a widely recognized soup, yet does not have any solids.
Great. Thank you, Joe. So what Joe's doing is he's giving us an objection. And Joe, I'm wondering if you could, what my map allows me to do is to say, hey, student Joe, would you kindly point out which claim exactly you disagree with here? So there's a few different boxes in our map right now. Which box are you denying?
I'm going to deny 2.1.
Okay.
That soup does not need to have a solid in it.
Great. So what I'm going to do up here is I'm going to get my little thumbs down, add objection button, and we say that soup does not need to have a solid in it. And then the support for that Joe gave is that, for example, tomato soup. Okay. So I just want everyone to notice that we can place an objection to any box in our argument map with this little thumbs down button. And Joe has given us an objection here. And we can be fairly precise about where exactly it is that we disagree. So let's see, Deb, do you want to respond? You said tomatoes are originally a solid. Do you want to expand on that, Deb?
Since tomatoes are originally a solid, okay, so since tomatoes are originally a solid, and we say that soup is a liquid and solid combination, but the combination part doesn't indicate whether the solid or the liquid stay in that original format.
I see. So do you want to amend your definition of a soup here to say like soup is a liquid and
solid combination that may or may not change its state of matter?
All right. How about, what if I say is a liquid and at least one time solid combination, maybe like that?
Okay.
Well, you know, so how did you put it? You said that may or may not change its state of matter?
Yeah. Because Joe will probably figure out some kind of gas that is emitted from some of these things. So
I don't know if I've ever had a gaseous soup. So let's see. Do folks have other examples of soups that don't have any solids in them? Joe, do you want to come back on this one? I feel like there must be other soups that don't have any solids in them. Maybe that would be a broth, though.
I was just going to say, is a chicken broth considered a soup? Because I think now we're starting to get into maybe some of the gray areas between what we would all clearly say is soup versus the idea of cereal with milk being a soup. Because I think the initial reaction to that is no, until we start to get into the fine parts of it.
And if you're going to call chicken broth a soup, what about consommé? Because, or bone broth, which is made from the solid bones being boiled down.
So sorry, Deb, are you supposing that those would or would not be soups?
I am assuming that they would be soups. A bone broth, well, if we're calling broth a soup, then we would at the same time need to call, a broth could be a soup because bone broth is made from boiled down bones, a solid.
Oh, I see what you're saying. So you're saying, well, even if chicken broth is a soup, then it would at least at one time have been solid, so it still fits your definition?
Yes.
Got it. Okay.
Another liquid soup would be split pea.
Okay. And would you say that that's also something that was originally solid then, Karina?
Yes.
Okay. So maybe we want to say soup does not need to have a solid in it, but the response is like, well, most soups were made of ingredients that were solid at one point. This would be a response to the objection.
Hmm.
Does that track with what you were thinking, Karina?
Yeah, made of ingredient. Most soups are made of ingredients that were solid at one point. Yeah, I had another thought, but I lost it.
It's okay.
It's gone.
Yeah, no worries. So we have, for example, tomato soup, right? And
Right.
chicken and bone broth. So maybe we've responded to Joe's objection. Joe, do you want to prop up your objection here, or do you want to concede that a soup can simply be anything made of ingredients that was at least one point solid?
I'm willing to concede. I think the way that we have refined that original definition of soup as a liquid and solid combination, I think through the thoughtful discourse of the group, I'm happy with how we've reframed that definition.
Excellent. Thank you. So, by the way, does everyone agree with 2.2 over here? Does everyone accept that cereal with milk is a liquid and solid combination? Is that a good premise?
I think so.
Yeah, I think so too. Although sometimes if you leave it too long, it gets really soggy. All right, Bruce has said, by this definition, a stew is a soup. Bruce, do you take that to be an objection, or are you happy with stew being also considered a soup? Are you good with a broad definition of soup that includes stew? I'm not sure whether you're taking issue with the main claim. Okay. Cool. So Bruce wants to challenge the definition that soup is a liquid and solid combination. So would we be okay with accepting that stew is a soup? Great. Go ahead, Deb.
No, I just said I would accept stew as a soup.
Great. So this could include stew too. So we got a very broomy conclusive definition of soup.
And then, so were you just gonna? There's oatmeal or cream of wheat hot cereal is being discussed now. Is hot cereal?
So Heidi, would you want to say that that is a soup or is not a soup?
I think you could go to an argument that it is a soup. It's just that it's a different form, just like stew and broth is.
Got it. So we're going to say includes stew, and you want to say includes oatmeal? Because I guess oats were at one point solid, right? And then they turned liquid.
I'm thinking.
I would argue that oats they get mushy, but they don't change into a liquid.
So Deb, you want to exclude oatmeal from the soup category?
I would include it.
Got it. So you want to say that oatmeal is within the purview of soup?
Yes.
Great.
In that
Awesome.
case, Nate, I would like to raise an objection. I don't have a definition objection yet.
Great.
But I would say the way that we're talking about introducing a liquid to break down a solid to make it a soup, I do not believe grits to be a soup. Though I would say we have broken down a solid and introduced water to the same consistency as oatmeal. But I don't think that is a soup, and I don't think it necessarily meets the definition of a liquid and solid combination.
All right, so Joe has placed another objection. What about grits? Does anybody want to respond to Joe's objection?
Well,
I can't remember the last time I had grits. I'm from Boston.
I was going to say grits doesn't count because we're too far north, Joe.
Grits doesn't count because no one would eat them.
I would like to say that that's not a valid objection to my objection. We can't just ignore what's been put on the table here.
I haven't had enough experience with grits to state that.
Is it the liquid to solid ratio? Because there's liquids with grits, correct?
I don't know whether grits tend to be more liquidy. I think they're usually more consistency of like cream of wheat or something, right, Joe?
That's what I would agree with. I would say it is more of a solid piece, but I would say the consistency would be like an oatmeal traditionally. You're probably somewhere between mashed potatoes and oatmeal.
Okay, so Joe is claiming that grits are the consistency of oatmeal, but not a soup. Do you guys want to concede that, or do you want to push that grits are in fact a soup?
No, so the consistency piece, because I was thinking of mashed potatoes, and if they're thin enough, it would be a potato soup. But if they're thicker enough, then they're not. Then they're mashed potatoes. And I personally like my oatmeal more like mashed potatoes than like soup. So it may depend on that. And I heard somebody say it earlier, and I don't know who it was, the liquid to solid ratio or the thickness, the viscosity. Is that the word we're looking for?
We need a glossary for this argument, man. Okay, so maybe you want to say maybe it could be the response could be something like, well, it could be a soup if it was sufficiently watery. Cool. In the interest of time, I just want to keep it rolling here. I just want everyone to kind of notice. First of all, thank you for this conversation. I learned a lot, actually. So I just want everyone to notice how we're all able to kind of track this conversation very straightforwardly on Zoom, because we're all sharing this visual map here, and we can see how the different claims fit together, and we can see the different objections and responses being given. And I think it allowed us to organize the conversation a little more effectively than if we were all just sort of sitting in a circle talking to each other, especially on Zoom, because if you're just kind of looking at everyone's head, it's a little harder to engage and think about, like, wait, what were we talking about? Were we talking about grits? Were we talking about, tomato soup? And what's, which item on the map are we looking at? So we're able to organize all the information visually, and then we can just kind of set aside any of the claims that we're not discussing and focus on the ones that we are discussing. I want to show you guys a couple of other tools that the argument map will allow us to do. One of them is pretty nifty, and that is to just add an independent premise. So if I wanted a whole separate reason to believe that cereal with milk is a soup, I could maybe give like a survey or something, right? And maybe it'd say like, 80% of middle schoolers think that cereal with milk is a soup or something, right?
You eat it with a spoon out of a bowl.
Oh, that's even better. So that's a whole other reason that Joe has given us. So you can see what I'm doing here, guys, is just adding independent premises, adding separate reasons. So you eat it out of milk. You eat it with a spoon out of a bowl. Great. So this is a separate reason to believe that cereal with milk is a soup. Works independently from these other reasons, and I can keep track of that as well. Another thing that you can do, I don't know, you guys teach middle school, maybe they don't know how to use utensils. I think even grown-ups occasionally slurp their cereal or perhaps their soup. I would probably try to eat it with chopsticks when I was in middle school. So what we've got to do as well is evaluate this argument and say, is it any good or not? And MindMap has some nice tools to allow us to do that as well. So one thing I can do is I can point at any premise and ask, is it true or false? So you might point at this premise here. And if you think it's false, then what you could do is change the color. So we tell people, if you think a premise is false, turn it orange. Or if you think it's true, you could turn it blue. So I think it's probably true that you do eat cereal with milk with a spoon out of a bowl. So I'm going to change the color to blue to indicate that I think that that's true. A few other kind of fun things that you can do. You can evaluate whether an inference is strong or weak. So you see these support connections, we call that an inference. And we could ask, is it strong or weak? So if you think that Joe's reason over here is very persuasive, you can click on it and make it stronger or weaker. And that allows us to indicate, do we think this is persuasive or not? Or maybe you think it's very unpersuasive that a bunch of middle schoolers think that cereal with milk is a soup. And so you could make that kind of thin, because maybe you would label it and you would say, middle schoolers are not a valid authority or something. The other things that you can do with MindMap that are worth mentioning here, one is you can add URLs. So if I had like a link to a source, maybe I found like a Pew survey of middle schoolers, I could just paste the URL in the box here, and MindMap will automatically generate a link to that source. So this is really nice when you're making historical arguments, right? Because a lot of times you want to link to historical documents or just other pieces of evidence, other sources. You can put those links directly in your map. So this is a great tool for students to assemble research as a way of preparing for an essay that they're going to write or a class discussion. You can add images, as you can see here. So that's also useful if you have an image that pertains to your argument, or it's just kind of fun and students will want to play around with that. And then you can add sticky notes. So one thing that I do with sticky notes is you can pose discussion questions. So here I noticed that a key discussion question is, what is the definition of soup? And sticky notes are pretty fun. I also use them to put notes on students' maps to indicate where I think they could improve their map. So it's like a comment on a Google Doc or something, right? If I think something doesn't follow the reason rule, which or any other rule of argument mapping, I could put comments with this sticky note feature here. I just threw a lot of information at you, so I'll pause and ask if there are any questions.
Do you use is this like a Padlet where students can see everybody's work at the same time? Or is this just a single source person doing this and leading the discussion?
Great question. So we found that it typically works better if one person is leading it, although it's excellent to have students work in small groups. You know, before the pandemic, you could certainly have multiple students sitting at a single computer in a classroom. Now that a lot of things are remote for folks, you can also just either, like right now, we could put you guys all in breakout rooms and have you work in small groups on a map with a single person screen sharing. You can have it work like Google Docs, where everyone has their own interface and everyone's editing simultaneously. We found that that's less effective pedagogically because you want students to talk to each other in order to add to the map. So you want students saying things like, no, put this premise 2.2 under premise 2.3, or no, 2.3 and 2.4 should really be co-premises, or no, the inference here is weak or strong. You want them using that argument language and engaging with each other. So you're actually going to get a richer learning experience if you have just one map that everyone is looking at, and then they're actually talking out loud to each other. Does that answer your question, Deb?
Yep.
Awesome. Yes, someone else asked, can it be shared like a doc? And the answer is yes. You can click File Share, just like Google Docs. So I could share this with my colleagues here. And you can also get shareable links here. It works just like other Google Docs. And I could copy this link and send it to you guys. And if you had MindMap integrated with your Google Drive, you'd be able to open this file. So it does work just like Google Docs because it integrates with Google Drive. Any other questions about MindMap or leading discussions with MindMap?
Someone asked if it's a Google product.
No, it's not. It's a third-party product, and it's actually just a passion project. So it's open source and it's free to use, but it's built by somebody clever enough to make it integrate with Google.
And student privacy data?
Yeah, it's GDPR compliant, and yeah, it's very top-notch with all the compliance. They're based in Europe, so they're even more strict than we are.
Right. Yep.
Aiden, do you have the MindMap how-to doc handy?
I can grab it right now.
Cool.
Yep.
So you guys, we're going to drop a doc in here that you can use to get started integrating MindMap with your own Google Drive if you'd like to start playing around with it, like, you know, later this week or next week. Any other questions on MindMap since we're here?
Before they do transition, I do want to, and Deb Bishop, I just saw you unmute, so please feel free to jump in after this. This is just the part I wanted to share. This was my experience sitting in a room with this, and I just want to reiterate, Nate said it in Boston, and he said it again toward the beginning about that we tend to talk past one another. And that's what really stuck with me. When you have this process, right, when I jumped in, Nate said, well, what are you objecting to? And I was able to say, 2.1, you were able to line up, draw these things. And I think Nate said it really well, right? Like you can track these pieces. And I think so often when we get students involved in discussions, debates, whatever you want to call it, there's this idea of one-upsmanship, and I can say something louder or more intense or funnier than you, something to get a reaction from the class and the crowd, but it doesn't really necessarily always go anywhere. That there should be a way to refer back to something and say, well, remember what Nate said, right? Instead of everybody having to, what did Nate say, right? It's on here and it's a reaction. And what I really also like about this, before I turn it back over to them, is that we all know some students aren't oral processors who immediately want to jump in and speak. This can be done typed, they can react. I would recommend like doing a fishbowl with this, having a small group of students do the argument while the other students build the argument map. They can respond, they can add in their own pieces, they can do it. So it's like a written way to track the oral pieces that we want our students to do, but we often struggle to quantify and kind of put down in paper a lot in this. So that's why I'm such a big fan of this, because I think it's a needed component that supports a needed skill in our classroom.
Awesome. Thanks, Joe. There you have it. Well said. I couldn't have said it better. Yeah. And we don't have time right now, but we talked with Joe about offering like a follow-up session to this. And if you guys wanted to go deeper on talking past each other when it comes to truly controversial issues like abortion or gun control, immigration, the topics that tend to, defunding the police, topics that tend to really divide people, we can show you how you can use maps to have those conversations as well. If you really want to dig into those conversations with your students. And it's the same principles as everything I just showed you. And we're going to teach you just a little bit about how to do that with the rest of our time here today with the charity principle. I guess, were there any other questions right now?
I was just wondering how you have your students share with you. If you do it like you would a Google Doc.
Yeah, exactly. So what you'd have them do is go up here to where it says share, and down here it says get link. And right now it says anyone on the internet this link can edit. So I can just copy this link. And for example, I'm just pasting this link to you guys there in the chat. And if you've already integrated MindMap with your Google Drive, you'll be able to open that link and it would look just like this.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Great. So one other kind of fun thing that we've built is if you just go to argumentmaps.org, and I'll drop that in the chat here as well. We've built a puzzle game that is argument maps on topics related to current events. We've also got Supreme Court cases. So these are 15 major Supreme Court cases, but we're putting out weekly content on current events. So this topic is whether or not schools should be meeting in person, or whether or not colleges should use affirmative action, et cetera. So this is an argument that schools should be meeting in person. What you can see here is it's a skeleton, and this will work better on your computer. We don't have it optimized for phones yet. But what you can see here is it's an argument map skeleton. And then I've got my claims over here on the left. And what I'm going to do is drag the claims into the map in a way that makes it make logical sense. So maybe I won't take any time right now to, well, why don't we take like 3 minutes right now? Is everyone at a computer or have access to a computer right now? It's worth just playing around with these really briefly to get a sense of how the game works, because students enjoy using it and you can see how you can use it as a kind of a warm-up activity. So why don't we take just like 2 or 3 minutes, have everybody go to argumentmaps.org and just pick a puzzle that is on a topic that interests you. Could be whether colleges should be playing sports right now, whether we should regulate social media, whether there should be a carbon tax, and try your hand at solving a puzzle, and you'll see there's a little timer. So see if you can solve one in the next 3 minutes. Again, I suggest doing it on a computer rather than a phone if you can. So any other, well, I guess how'd it go? Were you guys able to solve one? Was it too tricky, too easy? Was it helpful? Just genuinely curious for any thoughts on this, criticisms.
I tried the Supreme Court case, Tinker v. Des Moines, because that's something that my kids work with. And it seemed pretty straightforward.
Nice.
So I think, I don't think it would take a little bit of work to help my 6th graders to it, but I think that based on what we've done, they would, if they did it like as a group, they'd be able to figure this out fairly straightforwardly. So.
You say you have 6th graders?
I have 6th graders, yeah. That's
amazing. You got them on Tinker. It's a kind of a subtle case. That's awesome.
Yeah, well, we study Constitution and government. So we talk about freedom of speech, and we use Tinker and we use Johnson, or Texas v. Johnson, and we also talk about kneeling for the national anthem. So it's a whole big thing. So they love it. They totally get into it.
That's really exciting.
Yeah.
Great. Well, please feel free to email us any critiques or comments. and I'll drop my email address in the chat as well. So now I'm going to turn things over to my colleague Aiden, and she's just going to show you guys a little bit about how to use our Logic Bootcamp, which is the course in critical thinking skills that we built to help students improve their logical reasoning skills.
Yeah, thanks, Nate. So hi, everyone. It's so nice to be with you this afternoon. My name is Aiden Castigian, and I'm a program director at ThinkerAnalytix. I also teach philosophy, in particular some logic and critical thinking classes at Wheaton College, which is a small liberal arts school in Massachusetts. And so, yeah, so there's sort of like two things we've thrown at you today. So the first is, you know, the argument mapping sort of structure or sort of visualization that we build in MindMap that sort of Nate was demonstrating for you all earlier. That's sort of what underlies those puzzles, right? Those nice maps. But to be able to build those maps and be able to you know, construct your own, there's a lot of really kind of subtle logical moves that students need sort of ingrained before they're able to construct a map that's sort of you know, sort of logical and rigorous. And so what we did is we built an online course that's essentially a logic boot camp that starts from just the very basics of sort of what is an argument, all the way up to students being able to construct their own argument maps. So what I'm going to do is in the chat, I'm going to drop a link to our course login page, and I'll also screen share so you can sort of see what it looks like. But that is the login. And so when you hit that link, let me screen share. You'll be brought to the login page, unsurprisingly. And essentially you can register as a teacher on our site. And this works a lot like Google Classroom. So we have teachers on this site using the course with their students. And we just wanted to give you a sort of quick survey of what the course looks like, what the kinds of skills are your students will get out of it. And then we'll get you on your way. So when you do log in and make a registration, you'll be sort of kicked out onto the course, the main course page, which looks just like this. You'll see the course is called How We Argue. And what this course is a series of sort of informational content in the form of videos, but coupled with literally thousands of practice exercises to help your students get the logical skills that Nate was sort of demonstrating in making that map about whether cereal is a soup. So I'll just talk a little bit about how the course works. And please feel free to drop questions in the chat or just shout out if you have questions, but I'll try to leave, you know, a good 5 minutes for folks to ask at the end as well. So you'll see the course is divided sort of into lessons, starting with lesson 0, which is just how to take this course. And one thing you'll notice once you get into the course, when it loads, my computer's being very slow today, is you know, there's sort of a menu on the left that gives you the different lessons, essentially teaching you the different components of arguments and the different kinds of structures that you can build in argument maps. And then within each lesson, if you click into, say I just clicked into lesson 3, you'll see there's some practice exercises, lots and lots of practice exercises to help students build those skills that Nate was showing you. But there's each lesson ends with what we call a mastery check. And that's a really critical feature of our course. So this course is built around mastery learning. So the idea being that we give students tons of practice, tons of opportunities to get their feet wet in the content, and then set a pretty high bar. So we're asking them to sort of master those many small logic skills, and then demonstrate their mastery in what we call a mastery check, which is essentially a summative assessment. And so what this means is that students sort of progressively work through the practice exercises and watch videos. And then when they're ready, you know, once they've gone through that at their own pace, are ready to sort of take this mastery check and show what they've learned. So we set a pretty high bar. Not everyone passes every mastery check on the first try, which is fine, right? That's part of learning, is you know, trying, and if not succeeding, trying again. So the idea is this is supposed to be sort of like a loop. Students can go back and do more practice, track their own learning, and then move forward to the mastery check again when they're ready. And by track their own progress, we try to help them with that. So you'll see here, I've started taking some of these practice exercises. You'll see those in yellow. I've gotten a streak on some of these individual skills, meaning that I've sort of passed the practice exercises, but you don't see any dark blue, which means I haven't passed any mastery checks yet. So sad. I need to go back and do some more practice and then try the mastery checks. So my teacher, whoever they are, can see this on their end. So there's a really nice teacher backend to this site. And just the one thing I wanted to highlight about our course before I open it up for questions is that we put a lot of emphasis on this principle, which Nate referred to, called the principle of charity. And so this isn't charity in the sense of like charitable giving. It's a principle that comes from philosophy, which is this idea that when we engage with arguments that are controversial, and especially arguments we are maybe predisposed to disagree with, we need to handle them with precision and care. And in particular, we need to give the person advocating the argument sort of the benefit of the doubt and try to be really, really careful about how we interpret what they say. And so we think that's a really important skill. It sort of asks students to slow down and really think about the arguments that they're reading, especially things from like politics, from social studies, right? Things that you all teach. And so we've tried to incorporate that kind of practice into this course. So just for a quick example, so we introduced this principle initially in lesson 1, and you'll see the skills here are listed. So we want students to read arguments carefully. We want them to interpret statements charitably, so by giving the author the benefit of the doubt, and practice charity in the world on places like social media, right? Places where they're going to encounter these controversial arguments and claims. So I'll just give a couple examples just in the interest of time, and then I'll open it up for questions. So for example, interpreting statements charitably, you see here I'm in a practice exercise. I'm being fed a practice exercise. And this one says that addiction is a mental health issue. However, many people have been thrown in jail instead of being given access to addiction services and rehab clinics. In order to decrease jail populations, addiction should be decriminalized. And so what we're asking the student to do here is identify what the most charitable, or you might say sort of reasonable interpretation of the statement, addiction is a mental health issue, is. So would anyone be willing to take a guess on this one, or more than a guess? So is it that all people with mental health issues struggle with addiction, that people who struggle with addiction should be in psych wards, that addiction can lead people to commit crimes, or that addiction is a mental health illness, that should be treated rather than punished? So just given what the argument says, which of those seems the most reasonable?
D seems the most reasonable.
Nice. Okay, so let's pick D. And the way this course worked, it's totally like all of the exercises and feedback are built in. So I select D, I press submit, and hey, we got it right? So you'll see the green indicates you got the question right. And then there's feedback for the student. So the idea here is that your students should be able to work through this course at their own pace without a ton of like on-demand support from teachers. Like this should be something that they can do asynchronously and remotely. And so, this says statement A is false, statement B, blah, blah, blah. It sort of goes through each one to explain why this is the right answer. And you'll see we've sort of set up the system to try to ask students to try to achieve a streak. So we want them to get sort of 3 in a row to indicate like, yeah, they've really gotten this skill before they move on to the mastery check.
Aiden, you had a question in the chat. Someone asked, the word charitable is interpreted as most reasonable rather than kindest. Good question.
Yes, good question. I mean, so in practicing this sort of like intellectual charity, you might be perceived as more kind than if you didn't, right? If I just take your claims in the worst possible interpretation I could. That would maybe appear to be very kind, but yeah, usually we try to draw those things apart. It's not necessarily a sort of personality so much as it is sort of trying to interpret things for reasonableness and truth. Yeah, so that's a great way to draw the distinction. Awesome. I know we're ending at 4, is that right? So I don't want to go too much over time, but if folks have any other questions as they're getting onto the site, I'd be happy to answer.
Aiden, we do not have a hard stop. So
Okay.
if you have to go, I would rather people get the information and the ability to ask the questions here. If they have to go, that obviously that they can go, but I don't want to cut them short.
Perfect.
Is charitable an academic word in philosophy? Meaning
Yes.
most reasonable? So that would be like a whole new vocabulary understanding for students, because it is for me right now.
It is, yeah, and we're actually working on a version of a full workbook on charity for middle and high school students because it is such a new piece of vocabulary. But yeah, so in philosophy classes at the college level, so normally if you write an essay about a paper you read, you're asked to interpret what they say charitably, right? So don't just like totally like make the person sound like they have no idea what they're talking about, right? Try to represent them in the best way. Yeah, so it is a new piece of vocabulary, and because of its other meanings, we realize that can be tricky. But we try to be very explicit about what we mean, especially Nate is our sort of star in all the videos in this course, and goes through it quite slowly and deliberately for folks.
Do you have a glossary of sorts?
We do. Nate, do you happen to have that handy?
I'll pull it up.
Great. Yes, we do have a glossary.
Is it a linked glossary so that a
It's
student
about
would
to be.
that word and click on it and be brought to the?
It is not linked to the course, no. But it does have the terms, all the vocabulary from the course, all on this one sheet, so they can reference it over and over again if need to. As a teacher, do we get feedback on how well students do in the course? Yes, great question. So we've worked pretty hard to try to make it pretty easy for you. So as a teacher, you'll have this link at the top that says My Classes. And when you go in here, you'll see different, you can add your own classes by just going to the bottom here and typing in, you know, like A block, right? And then you'll get a group code. And when you send that code to your students and they register, they'll be asked for your group code. So they can add themselves to this course in the way, you know, you would to a Google Classroom, if folks are familiar with that one. And so, yeah, you on the back end will be able to monitor students' progress. Mine looks a little crazy because I used it in a different way. But you'll see, I can see all of my students and sort of, you know, what things they passed. Dark blue means they mastered the material for that lesson. And then if I want to, I can go into a particular student and see which things they've done. And if I want to, I can go in and see the specific questions they did. And it'll show me which ones they did well, or which ones they got right and which ones they got wrong. So you can get very granular with it if you'd like to. But the idea is to give you like at quick glance sort of where everybody's at.
Can students reset their own quizzes, or is that only a teacher?
No, actually, I think that's only an administrator level. So only like Nate and I and our tech team can reset quizzes for folks.
So you can't. So if my student wants to take the quiz a second time because they've gone back, I can't reset that?
Right. So there is a way to get it reset. So if you look, oops, I just clicked it and it went away. So there's a chat function built into the course. You see Nate and I are hanging out in the chat. And so if your student like runs out of questions, like I said, there's thousands of questions in the course, but if they do run out, they can chat us, and we'll reset it for them. For the mastery checks, there's like six-ish or more versions for every mastery check. So I will say students who have gone through the course and actually do the practice and watch the videos don't usually need anywhere near the 6 tries to master. It's only when they're really just sort of only taking the mastery checks, sort of just trying to beat the system, that they can run out. What's the average time to complete? It is self-paced. It's for, I think, the average high school student, we're projecting something like 10 hours start to finish. Yeah, but like it is self-paced, so it could be slower or faster depending on how depending on the student.
And just to be clear, that you would protract that's 10 hours. Many teachers find they'll have their students do about a lesson per week, maybe. So each lesson is going to be something like 60 minutes. Or up to 90 minutes potentially if students are really struggling, or it could be as few as 30 minutes. So you could assign them to complete one lesson per week, and they can do that at any time during the week at their own pace. So 10 hours would be the net over the course of a semester or whatever it is you want to do.
Yep, and we do link here to the puzzle game. So if you're ever not sure how to get back there, it'll bring you right to a puzzle. Not seeing any other questions in the chat. Are there any other questions from folks?
Have you used it with middle schoolers? The whole course?
Yes, we have. The whole course. That's a good question.
The first 6 lessons, the ones that are up, yeah, they've been used with middle schoolers. Mm-hmm.
Yep.
And any tips about it?
Just try to insist that they actually do the practice exercises instead of just jumping to complete the mastery checks. It's in general with this material, there's no sort of shortcuts or hacks, or like the students who just try hard do better. The students who try to put it off to the last minute and not really think don't do as well. I mean, the analogy that we give them is like going to the gym, right? So there's no like shortcut to like getting stronger. You just have to like do the weightlifting. You can't like just sort of watch other people or like hope that, if you sort of lurk in the gym that you'll get stronger. It doesn't work that way.
So the slower to process students actually have an advantage?
Frequently, yes, because they have the right approach to how to do it.
Oh, does this read, is it universally designed for access? Does it have speech? Does it have a read aloud feature?
Not yet, no.
And are the videos captioned?
I think the answer to that is also not yet.
Okay.
I could be wrong. Let me look, but I don't think they're captioned yet. We're getting there. We're a small but scrappy team.
So those would be big things to add in to make it even stronger to be able to use in public schools.
For sure, yeah, it's a great suggestion that we've heard from other folks as well. Mm-hmm.
That's very cool.
All right. Any other questions? Awesome. Thank you, Katie. Appreciate it.
So
right, if there are no other, oh, sorry, go ahead.
I can't get in. I tried registering twice and it doesn't like me. And I don't know whether it's my username or my password is weird or.
Deb, if you stick around, we'll make sure you get the, don't leave. Let's do a last call on any questions from participants for Nate or Aiden. Last call. All right, well, Nate and Aiden will stick around after I hit stop on the record button. So if you have additional questions or need additional support, please don't go anywhere. But I would like to formally say thank you to Nate, Aiden, and Anna still here. Thank you, all three of you, everybody from ThinkerAnalytix. I'm proud and happy to have brought this to Maine to share with you have a small but mighty group. We have a small but mighty group of teachers here. And thank you everybody for who is willing to share their thoughts and feedback as well. And again, one last thank you, Nate, Aiden, and Ann for your time today.
Thanks, everybody.
Thanks
Thanks so much for having us,
everyone.
you guys.
Yeah, this was great.
Thank you.